Welcome! So, you've probably wondered this before. When you give money to a good cause, how do you really know it's making an impact? Well, today we're going to look at two pretty fascinating financial tools designed to do just that: development impact bonds and donations through mutual funds. We're going to break down exactly how these new models connect your money to real measurable change.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll kick things off by unpacking what an impact bond actually is, and we'll meet all the key players who make them work. Then we're going to switch gears and see how regular folks like us can get involved through mutual funds. And finally, we'll tie it all together with what it all means and the most important takeaways. All right, let's jump right in.
Okay, so let's start with a core problem in the world of traditional charity, right? When you donate to a project, let's say a program to improve literacy rates, you're basically funding the effort. You're paying for the attempt. But how can you be sure you're actually paying for the result?
That exact question is what has pushed some really smart people to completely rethink how we fund social good. And the answer they've come up with? It's some pretty creative financial solutions that build accountability right into the system from the get-go. And that brings us perfectly to our first major topic, the impact bond.
So what in the world is an impact bond? You might hear a few different names for them: social impact bonds, or maybe pay for success projects. But don't let that fool you. They all work on the very same core idea. So let's take a look at the official definition to get us all on the same page.
The most important part of that sentence, the part you really need to remember, is that payment is tied directly to success. It's a huge shift from funding an attempt to paying for a proven result. But for a system like this to actually work, it takes a whole team of specific players, and each one has a really vital job to do.
You should really think of a development impact bond, or a DIB, as a partnership. It's a team effort, and it only works if every single player does their part perfectly. So let's meet the team.
First up, you've got the service provider. These are the doers, the experts on the ground. This is usually the nonprofit or the social enterprise that's actually running the program. Building the schools, operating the clinics, or providing that essential job training.
Next in line is the outcomes funder. Now, this is typically a government agency or maybe a big foundation that has a social problem they really want to solve. They're the ones who essentially put their hand up and say, look, we will gladly pay to fix this problem, but we're only paying once you've actually proven it's fixed. They guarantee the reward, but only for success.
But hang on a second. If the service provider needs money to get started and the outcomes funder only pays at the very end, where does the starting cash come from? Well, that's the crucial gap, and it's filled by our next player, the risk funder. These are the investors who provide all the upfront capital, basically making a bet that the project is going to succeed.
And last, but definitely not least, to make sure the whole thing is fair and above board, you need a referee. That's the independent evaluator. This is a totally neutral, third-party expert whose only job is to measure the results against those goals that everyone agreed on at the start. Their final report is what determines whether or not the outcomes funder pays up.
Okay, so let's put it all together and see how this actually flows. Step 1, the risk funder puts up the cash. Step 2, the service provider gets to work. Step 3, the independent evaluator comes in and measures everything. And now we get to a fork in the road. If the project succeeds, that's step 4, the outcomes funder pays back the risk funder, usually with a little extra return as a thank you for taking that risk. But if the project fails, that's step 5, the outcomes funder pays absolutely nothing. The investor loses their money. See how that works? Everyone's incentives are perfectly aligned toward getting that positive social outcome. It's brilliant, really.
Now, these impact bonds are usually for big players. We're talking large-scale, institutional investors. So what about the rest of us? Well, our second topic today looks at a way for everyday people to get involved in funding social causes, and it's a lot more accessible: donating through mutual funds.
So when it comes to giving through mutual funds, there are generally two main ways to do it. As you can see in this little table, you can either choose to donate the interest that your money earns, or you can donate a small slice of your actual investment. Let's break down exactly how each of these works with a couple of real-world examples.
So this first model, it's kind of like you're lending your money to a charity for a little while. You put in a principal amount, right? The fund then invests that money into something safe like debt securities to generate interest. And that interest is what gets donated to the cause. Then, after a set amount of time, say 3 years, you get your original investment back. It's a pretty neat way to make your money do some good in the world without actually spending your capital.
The second way to do it is a much more direct, kind of automated donation. With this approach, you decide upfront that a certain percentage of your investment, in this case 10%, will automatically be sold off and donated every year. There's even an intermediary organization that vets all the charities to make sure they're legitimate, and you can often pick which cause you want to support. So here, your capital does go down a bit, but you're making a steady, direct impact year after year.
So there you have it, two really powerful models. One is for big institutions that are totally focused on outcomes, and the other is for everyday people who just want an easier way to give. But how common are these options? I mean, what does this actually mean for you right now? You know, the key thing to remember here is that this is all still very, very new. We're on the cutting edge. These aren't products you can just find on every investment app, at least not yet. The rules and the frameworks, like how they'll connect with new ideas like social stock exchanges, are all still being worked out. So while the concepts are incredibly powerful, the infrastructure to support them is still being built.
All right, we have covered a lot of ground. So let's take a second and just boil it all down to the most important things you need to remember.
So to recap, first, development impact bonds completely flip the script by shifting financial risk onto investors, which guarantees that money is only spent on what's been proven to work. Second, there are new kinds of mutual funds popping up that are creating a really structured, transparent way for the rest of us to contribute. And finally, both of these methods are super innovative, but they're still in the early days.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty big question to think about for the future of social finance. What's going to make the biggest difference? Will it be these large-scale outcome-driven contracts like the impact bonds, or will it be about democratizing giving and letting millions of smaller investors participate? The truth is, it's probably going to be a mix of both, and it is going to be absolutely fascinating to watch this space grow.
Hey, if you found this explainer helpful for getting your head around these new financial tools, please do us a favor and like the video, and of course subscribe for more deep dives into complex topics just like this one. Thanks so much for watching.